Well, greetings, everyone. We're back. Welcome back to the Live Your Faith podcast. Those of you who are loyal listeners probably have realized we've had a gap here of a few weeks, and that's because we've been traveling overseas. I'm actually recording this in Zambia, Africa. We return back to the United States next week and should be into a normal schedule and normal availability. We've had some technology challenges here in terms of Wi-Fi and cell phone access and whatnot. Also, we've had a very busy schedule every single day teaching, so thus the gap. But we're picking up where we left off and ready to rock and roll. One other thing I should tell you is you may have noticed we're no longer on Facebook. I was canceled. No real explanation as to why. Appealed the decision, got nothing except an absolute rejection. So don't know if it was a fraud situation where someone was impersonating me or whether Facebook just got tired of too much Christian content, because I know they've done that to others. So we're done with Facebook, but we'll be distributing through other means. And I hope that you'll stay tuned and let your friends and family and neighbors and strangers all know that the podcast is alive and well. Thank you very much. All right, we're picking up where we left off. Proverbs 19, verse 1 says, "Better to be poor and honest than to be dishonest and a fool." So, yeah, I mean, it's funny, the contrast here. It's not what you would expect, right? Poor and versus being a fool, honest versus dishonest. It's interesting. I think, when we recognize that many people who are poor and honest are happy people. I'm surrounded by them here in Zambia, where many of the Zambians are happy people, but they have nothing by our Western economic standards. And yet they garden and they work the farm and they take care of their families and they worship the Lord. They don't have all the niceties and ease of use items, the various creature comforts that we have, but they're happy, many of them. So I think that's a good lesson, and I think it fits with this verse. You can be dishonest and be a fool. You're basically, looked down on and will ultimately be judged. So why go there? Why not live a life of simplicity, but honesty and peace, than dishonesty and ending up being seen as, understood as, and suffering the consequences of foolishness, being a fool. Verse 2 says, "Enthusiasm without knowledge is no good. Haste makes mistakes." And that's true often in our youth, isn't it? We get excited about something, we're ready, shoot, aim, Instead of ready, aim, shoot. We jump the gun, we rush into things, we get all excited. And a certain amount of that is okay, isn't it? Because we have a zest for life, and we learn through our experiences, the hard knocks as well as the good experiences. But ultimately, to slow down a bit, get the knowledge we need, and then make decisions and take action based on that is a better way to live. Produces a whole lot more better fruit and is a lot less stressful, for sure. People ruin their lives by their own foolishness, verse 3, and then they're angry at the Lord. Oh, have I seen that as a pastor? People who do stupid things, make really bad choices, connect with people who are just really bad for them. This happens in romance a lot. You'll see someone just get paired off with somebody who's just a human train wreck. They're not spiritually close to God. They're not, as stable in their lifestyle. They may be outright crazy in terms of drug use, alcohol, abuse, whatever. And they get, connected with these people, and they just drag them down, 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 down. And then when they hit bottom or things really go sour, they say, "Why does God do this to me? Why did God do? Why hasn't God helped me?" And I think, wow, yeah. Well, he helped you when he taught you the right way to live, not the way you've been living. when he taught you about choosing your friends and how to avoid certain problems. Proverbs has advice like that we've already covered in this series. So God was helping you. You just weren't listening, And he's still there for you. If you repent, clean up your act, he'll bless and forgive and lead you and move you forward. So, but boy, does that happen. People get mad at God. It doesn't do any good to get mad at God when you make a bad choice. I remember one time just going off on God for like 3 hours, complaining about all these things happening in our church and ministry at the time and how stressed I was and so on. And I felt him prompting me. Every time I'd, yell for a few minutes about something, I felt like he prompted me with, is that all? And no, it's not all. As a matter of fact, blah, 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 blah. And this went on and on and on. And finally, one more time, I was literally getting hoarse. I was yelling. My neighbors probably thought I was crazy. And I felt one last prompt, is that all? And I broke. I cried. I wept. I said, Lord, the truth is, I'm mad at me more than you. I'm the one that made these choices. I'm the one that put us in this situation. Please forgive me. Please help me. And I felt his love. I felt like a holy hug at that moment, spiritually, and that was comforting. Verse 4, wealth makes many friends, and it puts friends in quotes here in the New Living Translation. Poverty drives them all away. Well, they weren't really friends, were they? And sometimes it takes poverty or hard times for us to recognize who our friends are and who they aren't. And I know this is a struggle for a lot of wealthy people, that they get jaded because everybody wants to be their friend because they want something from them. They want money. They want help. So they get, after a while, suspicious and they become reclusive because they just don't want anybody around them with their hand out anymore. And so it's too bad. It's sad. Sometimes they can get past that by hanging out with other rich people who aren't looking for their money, and they can befriend them. But it shouldn't be that way, should it? Not for us. None of us should be looking to befriend somebody just so we can get cash. And if you're in that situation, you need to be careful who you get close to. I understand that. That's real. That's understandable and appropriate. But you can also find people who are not interested in your money, and they just want to be close, as friends. And you can pray for God to lead you into that and open those doors, whether they're well off themselves and don't need it, or whether they're just somebody who has the right heart. And that's another reason why, as believers, we should probably befriend and be closest to people who are also believers, who value things other than status and title and money. A false witness will not go unpunished, nor will a liar escape. Verse 5. God ultimately is the judge. And when I teach on forgiveness, I tell people this, that the reason that you can forgive, being for giving it to God and handing it off to Him, whatever the hurt was, is because He's the only righteous, perfect, flawless, omniscient judge. If they need justice, the people that have hurt you, He'll bring justice. If they need mercy because they've repented and they're turning, then He'll bring mercy. He's better equipped than you are, better equipped than I am, better equipped than any human being, because at best, we only have part of the story. At best, we only see what has been put in front of us. God knows and measures the heart as well as the external things. And He promises to bring people to justice. So that's, this is an example of that, and I think it's something we can put our trust in, our confidence in. The next verse here, verse 6, many seek favors from a ruler. Everyone is the friend of a person who gives gifts. And again, we need to be careful how we view our rulers, our leaders in the government, in the church. We should check ourselves. So we're not just being nice to them to get something from them or to get favor. We're really just trying to honor and respect as we should. I think also with this, leaders need to be cautious. They need to recognize that people want this and not give into it, not give gifts to gain more approval or so-called friends, not be in that place. I think the other thing is many times when people want money, they're hurting for money, we give them money, it's the worst thing we could do for them because they are now getting something for nothing and perhaps validated in living out the same lifestyle that brought them to where they are now, already, the poverty they're in. I also think that many times the money isn't used for what we're told it's going to be used for. You hand someone cash, it may go to alcohol, drugs, who knows what. Better to buy them something they need if you really feel you should help, like food, than just hand them a big bill or some cash. So, yeah, I'm not one that sees people standing on the corner with a sign, homeless, anything will help, and throws money in a bucket. People may think I'm harsh for that. I think it's loving not to do that. I will offer, I've given out my card and offered to help connect them to a rescue mission where they could get spiritual help and food and clothing and shelter and, be brought to a better place and given job training and everything else. And most of them won't take advantage of that, which tells you that many times, I hate to say this because I don't know every case and I can't judge every case, but I've seen people working shifts on different intersections where someone's there with a sign and a new guy comes and the old guy leaves, and it's like a business. And I can't help but think that some of that money is not going where we think it's going, and helping who we think it's helping. So it's better not to make friends by giving away cash. The relatives of the poor despise them. How much more will their friends avoid them? Though the poor plead with them, their friends are gone. And that's sad, but it's often true. But again, those are fair weather friends. Those aren't real friends. Those aren't people who truly care for you and I. Those are people that are just looking for something for nothing. To acquire wisdom, verse 8, is to love oneself. People who cherish understanding will prosper. So when you pursue wisdom, which we've talked a lot about in Proverbs, obviously, you're loving yourself. You're helping yourself. Because wisdom, as we've said, is applied knowledge and applied understanding. It's putting it to use in real life and seeing the fruit of it. And so when you acquire that and you begin to experience that, you're blessing yourself, you're loving yourself. And people who cherish understanding will prosper. Again, what's understanding? Understanding is the why something's true, not just the fact that it's true. I believe that as Christians, we should look at the Bible that way. We shouldn't just read and say, okay, that's true. We should also ask why. And then we should apply it and reap the benefits. When I say why, I don't mean we're argumentative with God and His Word. I mean that we're trying to understand the basis for it. When God tells us something we should do or something we should stop doing, there is a why. There's a reason behind it. And understanding that gives us peace of mind. It also gives us clarity. And sometimes it helps us apply the truth better because we understand it in depth. Number 9, verse 9, a false witness will not go unpunished and a liar will be destroyed. There's a repeat of what we read just a minute ago. What is this? God reaffirming that, hey, I'm here. I'm a judge. I see everything. Nothing gets away from me. Maybe in this life, or for a temporary portion of this life, someone seems to have gotten away with, being corrupt or evil or being dishonest. But in the ultimate sense, God says, nope, not going to be true. Won't last. Verse 10, it isn't right for a fool to live in luxury or for a slave to rule over princes. There's a certain, order of things, right? A certain justice of life and of the economy and whatnot. Fools shouldn't live in luxury because it doesn't help them, nor does it help anyone else. They don't use it properly, and they will lose it. And, someone who is a slave shouldn't rule over princes. Now you say, well, we don't believe in slavery. I get it. No, we don't. But the person who is, maybe we would think of it as an entry level worker, or someone who's not independent in some way, shouldn't be leading people who are in authority, or people that are leaders already in our culture. There is an order to things, and we should seek to change our situation. If you're a fool, you should seek wisdom. If you're a slave, you should seek to be free and to work and earn, and not have to be indentured to someone or beholden to someone. Again, we think of literal slavery, but I think many times people who are stuck in entry-level jobs, just struggling and struggling and struggling, maybe stuck, not even an entry-level job, but stuck in a dependency on the government, where they're receiving government aid and assistance and food stamps and everything else. They're stuck there. They're a slave to the government, and they should fight to get out of that and be free. And that's really, I think, the point. Verse 11, sensible people control their temper. They earn respect by overlooking wrongs. Yeah, it's not a sin to be angry, but it does lead to sin many times, doesn't it? When we don't use our anger for good, we don't control it, it does lead to harm and damage. And that's why sometimes it's better to control that anger, channel it into something positive, instead of attacking someone who's done something that was wrong. The king's anger is like a lion's roar. It sends fear into you. I was with my wife staying at I guess you'd say an animal reserve, place where they do safaris here in Africa, in a little bungalow. And we were sitting outside at night, and all of a sudden in the distance, I'd say maybe 100 yards away or so, we heard, this roar. And she said, what was that? I said, well, I would guess that was a lion on the hunt. And she said, well, I think the inside of our bungalow is nice. Let's go look at that for a while. It sends fear into your bones when you hear a lion. But it says the king's favor is like dew on the grass. It's cooling. It's comforting. It provides sustenance to the earth. So obviously we want the king's favor, and so we should not do things to just oppose those in charge. I'm amazed when I see the news and I watch people who are being pulled over by the police, and instead of cooperating, they get their back up and they get all indignant, and then they start, well, I don't have to give you my driver's license. I don't have to show you my insurance. I don't have to do anything. I don't have to roll down my window. I don't have to this. I don't have to that. You don't know what you're doing. Let me see your badge number. Who's your supervisor? I want to talk to him. And they're just totally uncooperative and resistant and hostile. And then they wonder why they end up being slammed against the hood of the car and handcuffed, and dragged out of the car first. I mean, I have had many encounters with policemen, and I just respectful, and they might want to see my license. I show it to them, and I've never had a problem. In fact, one time I had one, instead of giving me a ticket, he asked me for marriage advice on the side of the highway. I was doing marriage counseling as cars were whizzing by, and I was guilty. I was speeding. He pulled me over. I cooperated with him, and it turned into a situation where he was sharing how he and his wife were at odds, and he wanted help. It's not worth it to provoke the anger of those in authority. Romans 13 is very clear that we shouldn't be doing that. A foolish child is a calamity to a father. A quarrelsome wife is as annoying as constant dripping. And that's why it's so important to build our families and have good relationships and try to, be at peace with one another. Learn to resolve conflict. Learn to use reflective listening and I language. These are some of the things we teach in our classes for couples as well as in leadership training. Verse 14, fathers can give their sons an inheritance of houses and wealth, but only the Lord can give an understanding wife. Yeah, and I'm blessed to have one of those. But I also know that even those that might say, well, I don't have an understanding wife, many times when you find how to best express love, you can turn someone who's not understanding, maybe a little hostile, into someone who is, because they feel loved, they feel accepted, they feel safe. And unfortunately, many times we as men don't do well at that, creating that, engendering that environment, loving as Christ loved the church, Ephesians 5, right? But that's something that can change. We can learn to do that. Lazy people sleep soundly, but idleness leaves them hungry. Yeah, they may wake up hungry. They might not be able to go back to sleep again because they're hungry. Yeah, it's good to work. And we take time off too, but we work hard when we're, able to. And it's a positive thing. I think people should enjoy their work. And what's the old saying? If you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life. In the sense of feeling like you're burdened, but you will work, you just love it, and you don't resent it. I'm in that boat when it comes to ministry, teaching and preaching and writing and so forth. I love it. It's not, I don't consider it, labor and, oh my gosh, I got to do this, because that's something I love to do. Verse 16, keep the commandments and keep your life. Despising them leads to death. Yeah, because we'll do things that are damaging and harmful, and ultimately they can kill us. God's way works. Our society, our culture wants to reject all the commandments. We don't want to fear God and respect Him, and we don't want to avoid taking His name in vain. Even people who claim to be atheists, when they're mad, they use God's name. I always want to ask, why do you bother with that name if you don't believe in it? What power does it have to curse using that name when you don't even believe that God exists, or you don't care that He exists? You're not pursuing Him. And all the way through the list. You honor your parents, you'd be better off than if you don't. You steal, lie, commit adultery, sleep around, you're going to suffer consequences. God's way works, though, when we listen to Him. Okay, let's see. Verse 17, if you help the poor, you're lending to the Lord, and He will repay you. I love that. But again, I think it's the key word here is helping. And you got to know that you're helping. Giving someone cash, as I said, when it could be used for drugs, so which would even potentially kill them, it's an overdose, that's not helping. Maybe directing them toward resources to get job training, to have some housing, temporary housing for free where they get on their feet. Those might be good things to help, but I don't think just handing cash to random strangers is necessarily helping them. But when we do help the poor, it says we're lending to the Lord, and He will bless, He will repay. Discipline your children, verse 18, while there is hope. Otherwise, you'll ruin their lives. I wrote a book recently, Discipleship Without Discipline, Modern Church Kryptonite. How Superman has kryptonite that'll take him out. Everything else, doesn't harm him. Bullets don't hurt him, whatever. But you throw a punch at him, you break your hand, doesn't hurt him. But, kryptonite, ooh, that takes him down. And when we don't discipline our children, or when the church doesn't exercise appropriate biblical discipline, that just, it hurts. It ruins people's lives. It doesn't help. We think we're helping by sometimes ignoring something, but in truth, we're just helping create or teach a pattern that will be destructive. Hot-tempered people must pay the penalty. If you rescue them once, you'll have to do it again. Yeah, sometimes we have to let people suffer the natural consequence of their actions. Children too. And by the way, with discipline for children, sometimes you don't have to punish. You have to teach, because the natural consequence of what they did is enough. If a kid gets into a fight and gets his nose broken, lip bloodied, you probably don't need to punish him on top of that, but just have some good conversations about other ways to resolve conflict. Because he's already learned a lesson. He's already got, he's already got consequences. He's wearing them on his face right now. Get all the advice and instruction you can, verse 20, so you'll be wise the rest of your life. We love to say, and the kind of teaching that my wife and I do, that all leaders are learners, and if you stop learning, you will stop leading eventually. You have to always be willing to get advice and information and instruction. That's a healthy way to live. You can make many plans, but the Lord's purpose will prevail. That's why it's better to plan with him as opposed to separate from him. To ask him, God, what would you have me do? How would you have me plan my day, my month, my year, my life? What is it that you have for me? And then just trust him to lead and trust his purpose and trust that there may be adjustments made to those plans because of his omniscience and his love. Loyalty makes a person attractive. It's better to be poor than dishonest. Yeah, loyalty is a missing character trait in this modern culture. Many times you see people go to a church, and then they go to another church, then they go to another church, then they find out they like this other church over here. And listen, if the church is preaching heresy, leave. If the church is caught up in sin, they won't repent or deal with it, leave. But for the most part, people don't leave for those reasons. They're leaving because they like the coffee better at this other church, or they think it's more convenient to drive to this other church, or they like the pastor better, the preaching better, the music, worship is better. Very few people take the time to say, Lord, where would you have me attend? Where would you have me serve? Where can I be of the most use to your kingdom? Put me there. Show me. Lead me there. People don't do that, and the church, capital C, is suffering for that. Loyalty, then, to where we're called makes us attractive and brings blessing, I might add, too. Fear of the Lord leads to life. Fear of the Lord leads to life, bringing security and protection from harm. Yeah, that we're supposed to only fear God, not everything and everyone else. And when we do, and we show him that respect, which is what it really means, respecting, honoring him, being in awe of him, obedient to him, then he protects us, and we don't have to worry. Verse 24, lazy people take food in their hand, but don't even lift it to their mouth. A lot of times people won't even make the bare minimum effort to care for themselves. And that is not blessed. That does not produce good fruit. That doesn't lead to a healthy life. If you punish a mocker, the simple-minded will learn a lesson. If you correct the wise, they will be all the wiser. So again, as we've seen throughout Proverbs, being open to correction and not resisting it, fighting it, constantly being opposed to it, presents an opportunity for us to be, growing and become wise or wiser and avoid other problems and seek other things that bring blessing. Verse 26, children who mistreat their father or chase away their mother are an embarrassment and a public disgrace. So they're an embarrassment to their family, but a public disgrace, meaning everyone can look at that and go, oh, no, that's wrong. That's evil. We don't want that. And I think this is why we do need to discipline our children, so they learn to show proper respect, and then they, too, will be respected. If you stop listening to instruction, my child, you will turn back on knowledge. You'll turn your back on knowledge. Absolutely. Like we've said, we need to continue to be learners. Verse 28, a corrupt witness makes a mockery of justice. The mouth of the wicked gulps down evil. Wow, what a picture that is. Like chugs evil. And of course, we don't want anyone to be a corrupt witness against us. We want them to speak truth, not evil, and so we should be doing the same. Punishment is made for mockers, and the backs of fools are made to be beaten. Yeah, it seems harsh, doesn't it? But that's why Proverbs is promoting wisdom and understanding and knowledge, and asking us to seek those things, to pursue those things, because it leads to blessing, not cursing. Well, that wraps up this chapter. Again, we'll be posting this on multiple venues. I hope you'll tell your friends and others about this podcast, and that you'll stay tuned for more. We should be recording sessions now on a regular weekly basis. So God bless you, keep you, make his face to shine upon you, give you peace this day. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time.